What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the CanesInSight podcast, brought to you by Caneswear. I am your host, Peter Ariz, alongside D Money. D, hoping that the Canes were going to be able to, stack a couple wins on top of each other after that win against Virginia Tech. Obviously, that did not happen against Duke. Blue Devils got the win against Miami. Simply put, what's wrong right now? Because, we do this show every week, and we get into these topics, right? And we talk about certain things week after week, right? A lot of them are showing on the field. But what is wrong? Because this is a deep issue, it seems like.
Yeah, it's tough times. You can see I'm wearing my work clothes here. I had to put in extra hours and just rush straight over here. Can't count on that CanesInSight money when the team's getting smoked by Middle Tennessee and Duke at home. So got to make sure I'm taking care of my business at work. But look, I think the fundamental problem is that Mario is learning his team, and he's learning the hard way. And, people can ask, well, we didn't pay him $8 million to learn on the job. Certainly he's an experienced coach, but he's learning lessons. I think that involves coaching, the coaching staff. It involves the players. When you look at this staff, it was very much an all-star staff in terms of guys that had individual success. But it was also guys that did not have experience with Mario Cristobal. So he's learning about those guys the hard way in some cases as he watches the team. Positions that he may have thought were a strength, he's learning the hard way. They're not as strong as they looked in camp. Again, cornerback being one of them. Offensive line, you were hoping to be better. It is not, and also been ravaged by injuries. The injury problem. And I mentioned we were investing in sports science. Unfortunately, that has not translated to health. You got 3 offensive linemen out, starters. Arroyo, your best tight end, out. 2 to 3 running backs out, depending on the game. Receivers out. Promising guys on defense like Chase Smith out. You're not seeing that sports science translate. The conditioning you're not necessarily seeing translate because in the fourth quarter, Duke.
But aren't these things that take more than a year, less than a year to implement?
Some of them are, and so there's 2 sides to it. On one side, you say, okay, he inherited this roster, which if you look at the roster, it has 2 transition classes, meaning Rick leaves, Manny comes in halfway through recruiting. You get a class that's not going to be a tremendous class. You also have last year's transition class, which has a lot of good players in it, but is small in volume because it's a transition class. So 2 transition classes, plus some disappointing classes in 2018. And the 2020 class, when you look at it, is not looking as good as you would have hoped once the results start coming in, even despite the high ranking. So there's roster issues, certainly. But the controllables aren't looking that good. I mentioned the turnover. 8 turnovers. It's unheard of. The penalties the week before, Miami's one of the most penalized teams in the country. The big plays on defense that are just bust.
Some of these things are just the fundamentals that you'd expect to be cleaned up pretty early on.
Right. It's like what Coach Flores for the Dolphins used to call take no talent. It takes no talent to not bust in coverage and have the right assignment. It takes no talent to hold on to the football in many respects. Throwing interceptions, it's certainly not an arm strength issue or even an accuracy issue. A lot of it's decision making. And the penalties, all of these things are controllable things. And it's frustrating you're not seeing that show up considering the investment you've made financially in the coaching staff, as well as conditioning issues, injury issues, et cetera. With that said, when you look at Mario Cristobal, the comparison you make for him is Butch Davis. He is a builder. He's not someone that's going to come in and with a scheme or with some sort of, just different approach is going to immediately turn the team around. That's not really what you paid for. You paid for better results than getting smoked by Middle Tennessee and Duke at home, but you didn't pay for somebody to come in and do a quick fix. You paid for someone to build this the right way in a way that's sustainable with championship-level talent year after year. So you kind of look at it like some of Butch's seasons early in probation, the worst one among them being 5-7. We talked to Steve Kim last week about the East Carolina game and some of those low points. Similar in many respects to what we're going through now. Although
I mean, look, I don't remember those seasons, right? But or that season, I should say. But I think that Canes fans are looking for positives to hold on to, and they're few and far between right now, which is where the issue comes in.
I'm struggling with it too. I mean, I live on positivity, so to not have that anything I could point to hurts. I want to say this is improving, that's improving, and there's really nothing to say. What I will say, if you're looking for positivity, and I mentioned it on a prior podcast, the guys from this class are performing, which says that this guy has some talent evaluation ability. Right. Colby Young, we saw him again have a great game. Wesley Massainth playing more and more. Ines Cooper, I think, would have played if not for some health issues. Matt McCoy, who did not play again, is banged up. I heard he's someone they really, really like. Skinner, Nigel Lee Kelly. These are all guys that are going to play a major role in this team going forward. And then the transfers, Daryl Jackson looking like an NFL first, second-round pick, a Raekwon Davis type, Messidor. Parrish, you saw how good he is. He needs to get the ball more. So these are all guys that they identified and added. So the optimism is you're going to take those guys, you're going to add 6 to 10 more transfers. That's the number I'm expecting. Let's say 24 signees. You have 17 commits right now. That's going to drastically reshape your roster on top of what was brought in last year. So if you're looking for optimism, it's the way that these guys have identified talent and not just signing highly ranked guys. Colby Young was not a highly ranked guy. That was an evaluation. If you look at what Butch Davis did well, it was evaluation.
Oh, imagine what he's going to look like and how he should hypothetically progress when he has a full off season at Miami.
That's the hope. Yeah. That's the hope. And you'll see the build. But right now, it's bleak. I mean, there's really not much you could point to and get excited about. Although, silver lining, obviously the TVD injury, you hate to see it. I don't think it's going to be a catastrophic injury where it's affecting his career. You want to take your time and protect his arm, both for what he can do for your program and also for the kid and his aspirations. But you get to see a little bit of the future with Jake Garcia and possibly Jakari Brown, both of whom played in the last game. So, they got to get some wins. You can't let this season just go completely sideways because you got to have some wins in your pocket to recruit and to sell optimism and get some kind of energy in the city. But I like the fact that we're at least getting a look at Jake Garcia as the starter, not coming in and making all the mistakes he did last time. But you're the starter. You come in, and this is your team. Get ready.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do. Obviously, he had his ups and downs last week, but I think the mentality, you alluded to it, is a little bit different going into the game as the starter. He's always been the guy. So I think being the backup quarterback, right, he's played the role, and he's done a great job of it. We've mentioned on this podcast before, and the guys will say it. He's in the locker room, around these guys, outside of the locker room. He's a guy that they trust and they really do like a lot. But he's accepted that role well. But now stepping up and having the opportunity to be the guy, right? We can see that moxie. We can see some of that, as you've talked about. I think you've used the comparison of a Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma, right? Because you aren't going to find him having the biggest arm in the world. He's not going to be running a 4.4, but he has the intangibles, right? Where I think now him being, like I said, him having that confidence, so to speak, that he's the guy, and who knows what happens moving forward. Like you said, how long this injury for TVD, hopefully he gets back ASAP for his health and for his career. But just excited for Jake and the opportunity that he has now, and Jakari Brown continues to show flashes, right, throughout his opportunities that he's gotten, and I think it's obvious that he's going to be probably a bigger part of the game plan than he's already been moving forward.
Yeah, you start with Jake. So having seen Jake since he got here in practice, both last year in that system and then this year, he's somebody that when he's at his best, he's stringing completions together. He's going 10 of 12 and really heating up and getting in rhythm and making short to medium throws with accuracy, timing, and the ball's coming out quick. Everything is happening quick. That's his game. if he's sitting there and really thinking and processing a ton and then having to drive the ball, though he does have a good arm, that's not really his game. He is very much an up-tempo, pass-first point guard who wants to distribute the ball and get it out of his hands fast. What you saw against Duke is different than what we've seen in scrimmages and in spring games and his limited game time before that. Not to say he hasn't had times where he struggled with interceptions. Certainly this spring, he took some time to adjust to Gaddis' offense, but he's better than what he showed. I don't think that's him. I think what happened with him, you had very poor interior play between Lawrence Big Baby Seymour, who turned out, he's really not what he looked like he was going to be as a young player in high school, and some of the other interior linemen, which have been very banged up, struggled to protect. When you get that interior pressure and you're a guy like Jake who's not super elusive, that's going to really, really get to you. And I think you saw some of that with the turnovers. Need to protect better, but really I think the best protection for Jake is more up-tempo, get the ball out of his hands quick, and let him get in rhythm and show what he can do in that respect. And I think when he's doing that, he is going to give us a look that will give us a chance to win. Now, Virginia is a very strong defense relatively to the rest of their team. They're 124th in scoring offense, so they're not going to be putting up a lot of points.
Which is crazy because from a talent perspective, right, they have some guys, which is why I still think this is a deceptively tough. Everyone's a tough matchup for Miami at the end of the day right now, but they have some guys that can spread you out. The quarterback play hasn't been great, Brennan Armstrong, but he had some buzz before the year. He's shown some things, previously on tape that he could be a guy, right? So they haven't, kind of like Miami, right? They haven't done it offensively this year, but they have a 6'7" receiver in Lavelle Davis. Keaton Thompson is a guy who played quarterback at Mississippi State. Is kind of their do-it-all weapon. He'll be playing in the league. I don't know, how fast he's going to run and all that, but he's just going to be a guy that the teams fall in love with, whether it be as a tight end type, just a bigger receiver, whatever it is, an H-back. They'll probably use him a wildcat, and expect UVA to use him in all these different types of ways. They line him up at halfback. They'll give him jet sweeps. So he's a guy to watch. And then Dontavion Wicks at the receiver spot as well. So they have guys, but like you said, their defense has been better than the offensive side of the ball.
And that's scary because our offense has struggled, and you got a quarterback coming in that's new. So you're talking about a defense that's 14th in the nation in yards per play.
See, when it comes to Jake too, I'll say this: I think he does have the mental fortitude to kind of shake off what happened last week, right? I think with a young quarterback, right, because he's still only in his second year, and he hasn't started. That's a worry that you're going to have, right? And it's a tough situation right now. Things aren't going great. I expect for him to step up to the opportunity and kind of look at it like, all right, well, I know things are kind of down in the dumps right now, and we may not have the easiest task ahead, but I think he'll rally the guys. So,
and that will give some energy to the program if Jake goes out there and has a great performance. Now you got Juice coming in. He's a very well-liked guy, very magnetic personality. The players love him. So he comes in and plays well. That's going to give us some energy and some juice. It's going to give some optimism for the future because he is hopefully part of the future of this program.
Now, all of this sounds great, but is he going to have the protection up front? Are they going to execute how they're supposed to execute? Is the run game going to be there? So it's I believe he can do it, but there's going to have to be a lot of things that fall into place that haven't happened so far.
No question about it. And Virginia's a physical team. That's kind of what they've always been when they play Miami. They're able to push people around up front. Remember Mandy Alonso last year really causing a lot of problems, number 91. I mean, they win matchups up front.
One of their better defensive players this year is another South Florida guy, Anthony Johnson from Chaminade, who actually transferred from Louisville. But, yeah, I mean, it seems like they'll snag a guy from South Florida every now and then.
Yeah, no, and they have an odd front. Their defense can be tricky with some of the things they do as far as their pressures. But, again, just the physical size is what really causes problems, at least by ACC standards. They're bigger than they are fast, and that is typically a tough matchup, especially when Miami now undersized with all the injuries up front. So it'll be a challenge. But, again, you want to protect Jake, get the ball out of his hands quick, use Henry Parrish. He's your best player on offense right now besides Kobe Young. So you want to get him going. And again, if Jake is, even if they're short passes, if he's completing them, that's when he's really at his best. And then he will hit the deep ball, as you saw last week with Kobe Young, a beautiful pass to make a big explosive play, which Miami has needed desperately this season. But then Jakari, you don't want to necessarily see Jakari in this game for an extended period because that means something happened to Jake or he didn't perform. But I have to say I'm intrigued seeing just the physical size, the athleticism. I've seen him in practice, and he's got a whip-like delivery. I've always compared it to Lamar Jackson, the way he just kind of whips it with velocity. He's getting more accurate. He's improved tremendously since the spring. He's somebody that either he, will get his opportunity this season due to injuries or ineffective play. Maybe he's not ready, but, he's the next man up. Or you'll just see more out of the package. And I think the passing part of it will be interesting to see because he's capable of, you load the box expecting him to run, he's capable of hitting explosive plays with his arm. And will you see that this week? I don't know. But that's something to consider as he continues to be a short yardage solution for a Miami team that's struggled in that area.
You mentioned Henry Parrish. I mean, what's your hope for the run game moving forward? It's been, I feel like I say it every week, but it hasn't been something that they can necessarily rely on. I know a lot of that, again, is what's happening up front. But what's the best case scenario for that run game moving forward?
Henry Parrish, I think you want to see Jalen Knighton get something going. He's never been a great runner. 3.9, we talked about last week, is kind of what he is. But get him going, making plays. You watch his highlights from last year. You say, where is this guy? Who are we seeing this year? And, of course, the fumbles have been catastrophic with Knighton. So if you can get something out of him, you're doing well. Thad, I just don't see it. And Lucius Stanley's only going to give you what he gives you. So that's a position that's really, really beaten down after looking so strong coming into the season. I think it's just going to be a lot of Parrish like Columbus when he was getting the ball 25, 30 times. I don't think that's a bad idea. Obviously, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but with the way he runs, with the way he avoids direct hits, I think he can have a bigger load than he's gotten. And now is the time to really feature him.
And then offensive line-wise, do you expect that group to get healthy anytime soon, or is it just going to be this mix and match thing week by week moving forward?
They're banged up. I wouldn't expect Zion back anytime soon or Justice Oluwasu.
Inez Cooper's got, like you said, I think he was banged up last week, but I would expect him to be starting at some point soon.
Yeah, health with him. And Matthew McCoy, again, I've heard a lot of good things about this guy. That they feel like got one with him as well. So he's been banged up also. If you can get him healthy, he's somebody that can factor in. And, we're talking about multiple true freshman offensive line, probably not a great sign, but at least, these guys are hits.
Start to listen. You talk about building depth. This is how it happens, right? You get some of these young guys who probably aren't ready to be in this position right now, but they come in next camp and they battle with some of these, hopefully these 5 stars that you bring in, right? And then it's a real competition. And then if that guy who isn't a 5-star isn't ready just yet, then you have real depth that's being built.
Absolutely. And look, if you look at the 2020 offensive line class, I mean, there's not much there to show. The 2000, aside from Jalen Rivers, 2021, Seymour has been a disappointment. Ryan Rodriguez has been hurt, really not a factor. Michael McLaughlin has a chance talent-wise, but he's been hurt. So just really 2 classes. You're getting nothing out of him aside from Jalen Rivers, and you really, really need help there. So if you're wondering why the offensive line is struggling,
they're going to have to they're going to do a lot of work in the portal, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely.
We talk about the receiver spot a lot, but I could see them bringing in 2 to 3 starter-type guys next year, in their eyes at least.
Well, some of those starters might be freshmen because
right.
Francis Mauigoa, top 10 player nationally, he was at the game last week. I'm sure he saw himself in the starting lineup as he watched that game.
And I mean more so that what the staff is bringing, saying this guy could be a starter for us, right? So even if he's not, I'm talking about starter-level guys, the way they brought in a Darrell Jackson this year.
Yeah, and Darrell Jackson is not just the body; he's an impact NFL guy. I think that's going to be sort of the theme when you talk about the transfer portal. When I say 6 to 10, I'm talking 6 to 10 guys that make an impact very much on the team immediately and have a chance to play at the professional level. I think more so than filling spots. That's what you're looking at in the portal. That's the hope, that's the goal, and there's a lot of confidence it'll get done.
And when we come back, we'll get to the bank. All right, welcome back to the CanesInSight podcast. Got the bank now deep, brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. And the bank, I think this is what the fans are waiting for. Obviously, the on-field product hasn't been too good. So the recruiting, what do we got?
Pete, talk about the bank. The real bank has been Underdog Fantasy. I'm up to 5-1. Really should have been 6-0 in my picks on this show. Breece Hall tore his ACL right before he beat the number, would have beaten it in the first half. So we're rolling. You sign up using our link, which is on the forum, social media, this podcast, or you use promo code CIS, either one. You get a $100 match up to your deposit. You can go playing daily fantasy and laying down money right away. Pick 3 in a row on over-unders on player performance. You hit all 3, you get a 6 times what you put in. So do the math on some of these picks. You got NBA, NFL, MMA. Everything that's hot right now is on Underdog Fantasy, including college football. Pick a player over under a certain amount of yards, touchdowns, you name it. You can do daily fantasy drafts. Those are happening constantly. It'll set your roster for you, so you don't have to worry about waivers and starters and all that. Just pick a team, lay some money down, and win some money. You can invite your friends. Anything you want to do on Underdog Fantasy, it's so easy. The app is extremely easy to use. Sign up. Again, use our link, which is on the forum, our social media, Canes.Insight at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, this YouTube page. You could use, again, promo code CIS, another way to get it. You will get a free match, Underdog Fantasy. Okay, so now talking recruiting. And people have been asking me for names lately, and they're wondering why I'm being so quiet. Is it because the team is doing bad, that the recruiting is going down? And really, the reason is we are recruiting heavily and getting feedback, positive feedback from a lot of players that are committed to other teams. And I'm talking about teams that have been in the college football playoff recently. You guys can probably figure some out. Some you won't be able to figure out. But these are positions of need, positions that you may say, how are we doing in this position? I'm not hearing a lot of new names. I'm not seeing the board expand. Well, the reason the board is not expanding is because there's traction with guys committed elsewhere. And again, people are going to guess. Some of these are names you have not been talking about. So that's really what's happening. In terms of numbers, I'm told up to, let's say, 24, 25 is a fluid number, but you're going to try to keep what you can in this class, 17 committed, and then add, 8 more, 7 more, depends. Could be more, could be less, but in that range. And then transfer portal, again, the number I'm hearing is 6 to 10, and they're looking for impact players. So this is going to be a major roster turnover, in terms of positions where I'd expect names to be added to this class as far as high school kids. I would say safety, linebacker, which could include the junior college ranks. Miami will be looking at the junior college ranks for linebackers. They want impact players there, especially with Chase Smith being out now. He'll be back next year, but you still want to add some healthy, talented bodies to that room on top of the guys already committed. Running back, wide receiver, I'd expect names to be added there at those positions. Offensive line still after Sampson hard in the game there. That's going to be a battle. Ohio State's making a run. Florida's making a run. He's got big dreams. He's very focused on his brand, but Miami's made a great pitch, both in terms of just off the field opportunities and also how he can be developed by Mario Cristobal. They feel solid about their current commits, even with a bad performance like we just saw. No imminent signs of a problem as far as the current class. 2024, I'm a little worried about because you'd like to see some winning momentum for those guys. So you got a running start next year. But this class is shaping up to be a very strong one based on all indications. And the reason it's quiet now is because they are working very, very hard on top name guys that are committed elsewhere. That's the story on the class, on recruiting. Florida State, circle that weekend. That's a weekend where you're going to have a lot of big-time kids trying to get on campus. It's going to be an important game. You want to fill up that stadium. If Miami can pull off a win there, not only will it help the momentum of the season, it'll greatly increase the momentum of the recruiting class because you're going to see all of these top guys funneled to that weekend of Florida State with the full stadium and hopefully a great experience. So that's the bank.
All right, well, we got questions coming up next. No, we got a new format, and we'll check that out when we get back on the Canes Inside podcast, brought to you by Caneswear.
The more things change, the more things stay the same. Caneswear is still the number one spot for all your Canes needs, your South Florida sports teams needs. They got it all. They got the new Miami Knights jerseys coming in, all kinds of new gear coming in, the new Adidas Ultra Boost. Everything you need to get ready for the season. You know, you've been working hard. Christmas is still a long way away. You got some money saved up. Blow it now. Buy some stuff. Get ready for the season. Look right. Everybody else is investing. Invest in yourself. Invest in your wardrobe. Look, no more of these old, ugly shirts from the 2014, 2016 when we lost a lot. New era, new gear, same old Caneswear. The best in the business for South Florida sports.
All right, so we have some voice notes to play from the Canes community, the CanesInSight community, I should say. And we're going to do this every week. We're still going to do the questions from the board and from social media as well. But this is our first go at this. So let's hear what you guys have to say here.
Yeah, we want different voices. You guys are tired of hearing from me and Pete. I want to hear what you guys got to say, your energy, your passion. So, Gmail, CanesInSight. Send it over. We want to hear what you got to say. Tell us how dumb we are. Vent about the team, whatever it is. We want to hear it. So let's get it rolling.
Yo, CanesInSight podcast. What's good, man? Hey, shout out to D Money, man. Shout out to my brothers on the thing, man. Go G4, Liberty City L. Those are my boys right there. Shout out to my boy Z-Rod, even though I feel like he be hating sometime, but yeah. So real quick, I got a question for the podcast, man. It seems like since we've been self-destructing this year, it feels like a lot of people are turning against. They're saying, South Florida kids suck. They're soft. I hate them. How do you feel about people, trying to shit on South Florida players, man? Like kids play football out here, man. Like, I think it's disgusting. I think it's terrible. Those people have no clue what they're doing, no clue what they're talking about per se. And if they look at our rosters, most of the players underperforming or not even performing at all are out-of-state players or kids that aren't from South Florida. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time.
So this is a topic that's near and dear to our heart. By the way, thank you for the voicemail, Kella. That was awesome. This is a topic that's near and dear to our hearts. We're the South Florida Homers of the Year. So, a couple of years back, I went and looked at out-of-state players that Miami had signed during our down period and South Florida players. The South Florida players significantly outperformed the out-of-state players. It wasn't even close from an NFL standpoint, a starting standpoint, whatever. Just the South Florida players were much better. Reason being, Miami was shopping in the bargain bin out-of-state. In-state, they were at least getting a couple good guys that would go on to be professionals, although there were a lot of bust mixed in there as well from South Florida. So I haven't updated that research yet, but, when it comes to South Florida, look around the country at other teams. Tennessee, their left tackle, not receiver at all, left tackle is from South Florida, Gerald Mincey from Broward. Alabama, left tackle of Alabama, one of the most prestigious offensive line spots in the country, Tyler Steen, St. Thomas Aquinas. So, Marcus Tate starting for Clemson on the offensive line. Renato Brown, a standout offensive lineman for Louisville. That's just on the offensive line.
Oh, Mikel Jones at Syracuse.
One of the best linebackers in the country. Who are the two best wide receivers? Maybe who are the
Zay Flowers.
ACC, the three best wide receivers, arguably, at least three of the top five. Zay Flowers, you mentioned. A.T. Perry from Palm Beach. Zay Flowers from University in Broward. A.T. Perry from Palm Beach. And then Aronde Gadsden from American Heritage at Syracuse now. So three of the best receivers, if not the three best receivers in the ACC local. And they went to schools that Miami could have easily beaten those schools head-to-head if they would have put the energy. So we're just not getting the right ones. You had those three receivers to our receiving core. Are we complaining about receiver every week on this podcast? No. Offensive line, you had some of those beasts we just talked about. Are we talking about offensive line on this podcast? No. Linebacker. We had Michael Jones. Are we complaining about linebacker like we do every week on this podcast? No. So a lot of it's about getting the right guys. Then you also have to win battles for the no-doubters. I'm talking about your Dallas Turners on Alabama, your Jordan Battles on Alabama, those no-doubt studs with character and talent. You got to win those battles.
You just said it right there with character and with talent. And when you say get the right guys, it's not, how good of a football player is he. You have to have that combination of the character and the talent, and you have to know what you're getting into, right, with these guys. Because, look, there is that stigma attached with them. So with what the who I don't know who it was that sent in the voice note, but what he's getting at is it seems like some fans out there are just saying that every single South Florida kid is a bust and turns out this way because they're soft and they're divas. There is that stigma out there, and I'm talking about from the league as well. They always do their extra research with guys from down here, but you got to have the combination. There has to be the right infrastructure behind them too. That's the other thing, right? Part of, and this is kind of getting into a deeper topic, but when you talk about the staff and the staff having not having worked together, right? A lot of it is the staff working with these South Florida kids. And I know a lot of them have had experience with it, but it's different when you're here in the city, right? That's what a lot of these other schools don't have to deal with. You take these kids out of the city and a lot of the distractions and the people around them are out of the picture. You're here in Miami, they have a bad day of practice, they can call up anyone that they want back home and say, you know what, I'm gonna go back home today, and I don't really feel like getting in the extra work after practice, right? So the infrastructure from the staff has to be there. It's not just, well, you're gonna recruit a kid from South Florida. You got to know what to do with them and the right people to put around them and to put in place. So that is what the discussion needs to become. Mario has recruited South Florida kids and knows the South Florida kid. It's about putting the right people in place now to make sure that they reach their full potential.
No, that's well said. And you mentioned the league has a stigma, some extra research on South Florida kids, and I'm sure that's true. But they also draft them more than any 100%. Than any other area. So
I don't mean it in a bad way necessarily, but I'm saying that the caller also, it's not coming out of thin air, right? No. There are instances, and there is that that diva stigma, so to speak.
I mean, we've seen it, and it's more than the kid. It's more the environment around the kid.
But again, dude, I'd make these trips to go recruit kids in the middle of nowhere, right? And it's not even the biggest schools a lot of times, but they are in these environments. Even some of the big schools. A lot of the biggest schools are in these, as we saw from your rant earlier this season on Alabama, right? But their environment's just way different. It's all football all the time, right? So it's not to say that it's just that Miami has the extracurricular activities, but their environment needs to be set up a certain way where, the second that something isn't going right, they want to just, go back home. And that's what it comes down to me.
And, as we go through the names of some of these guys that have succeeded and some of the guys that have failed. So just giving two examples of guys that to me were very much disappointments or have been disappointments. Big Baby Seymour and Thad Franklin. They're not what they have the talent to be and what they look like they would be. Their bodies have not developed the way they probably should. That should be 10 pounds leaner. Big Baby should be leaner and more athletic. Both of those guys, you look at them, they just don't look like guys that have been putting in the work. I'm not there, but, they don't look like it, and they're not performing like it, and they haven't developed like it. And when they signed, I talked to somebody who knows this world, college coach, and he goes, those two kids are not going to pan out for what they should because look at the way they handled recruiting. And both those guys were very much up and down. There was some drama, just it wasn't a smooth process. Now flip that and look at the guys that we just listed as having success. Marcus Tate, smooth recruiting. All the guys that went to mid-majors like Perry or Flowers or Steen when he went to Vanderbilt. Smooth sailing on the recruiting process. Michael Jones. These guys, they didn't have a lot of drama. Dallas Turner and Jordan Battle, they handle it like pros. So you will have your Dalvin Cooks and your Patrick Petersons where there's a dramatic story and the kids end up being great players. But some of the chinks in the armor, you can see that during the recruiting process. So if you're recruiting South Florida and you're Cristobal, whether it's sleepers or big-time guys, traits and character. There's enough guys with traits that you can be selective on the character stuff. Even if they're guys that maybe like an A.T. Perry who hasn't put it all together yet, You can see the traits, the height, the jumping ability.
Coach him up.
Yeah, you see the progress as a senior, which he's made a nice leap. He made a nice leap as a senior, and you coach him up. Micah Mays from Benjamin, who is not a full-on target yet, doesn't seem like it for Miami, but someone they're monitoring. He's an example of a guy with character, traits, track background. Maybe that's the right type of guy to get.
Yeah.
Because no one can tell me that Restrepo doesn't have heart. No one can tell me that Henry Parrish doesn't have
like
heart.
a Ray Joseph looks like the perfect example of
100%.
that. So, all right, next one.
Hey guys, this is Jordan Livingston, JL 2014 on CanesInSight. The theme for this team the last 20 years has been underachievement. We never win games that we're not supposed to win, but we consistently lose to the underdog. And nothing was more indicative of that than last weekend when we were bad enough to fumble 5 times and unlucky enough to recover 0 of them. And the only explanation for being consistently bad and consistently unlucky is that we're cursed. And while I think there are a lot of strong candidates, I blame Jim Larinaga. Because Coach L overachieves so regularly and beats Duke and North Carolina so often, there's no karma left over for football. And I'm resigned to the fact that as long as Coach L is with Miami, the sports gods are on his side, and we're better off appreciating big-time basketball wins. Go Canes.
Listen, if you're insinuating we got to get rid of Coach L to turn the football program around, I don't know if I'm on board for that after last year's success. But, yeah, I mean, listen, the underachieving, my outlook on it is this. I truly just believe that they just look at the U on their uniform and they just expect to beat the team across the line. The problem is it's happened for so long that it's like, how do they not understand that at this point? And last week was a perfect example of that. But at the same time, we also can't discredit the amount of parity in college football now. And we can't just look at and it's easy to say don't look at the amount of stars, right? I know that everyone wants to talk about the blue chip ratio and all that. But that doesn't really work for Miami's roster right now. So, I don't know if that necessarily answers the question, but
yeah, no, I mean, one thing he raised that was interesting is he says, we've lost a lot of games we shouldn't have lost, and we've never won one that we shouldn't have won. So I think the simplest explanation for that
that's why the Notre Dame win felt so, enlightening.
Right. And we probably should have won that game. We had better players if you look at NFL. If you go back and look at NFL, we had better players than Notre Dame in that game. Mm-hmm. Just go up and look at the NFL players. But, I think part of the problem is the basic thing is we've been a bad team for 20 years. The teams have not been good. So, like you mentioned, there's parity, and when you're a bad team, you're going to lose a lot, or an average team. But when you saw Duke beat us, the guy did the U and smashed it on his knee. That was on, major media outlets catching that. Why does it matter that a player from Duke is mocking another bad program or a team has not done anything in a long time? Why does that matter? Well, it's because it's Miami. So you're getting the best shot from the teams that you're better than or equal 100%. To, and you're not getting overlooked by the good teams.
No matter how bad you are, you're going to get their best shot.
And the good teams are ready for you. It's not like when we play these big name teams like Alabama or Clemson that they just suck. They're amped up. They're going crazy. They're all hyped up, and then they kill us. So it's the worst of both worlds because we're not a good team, but we're treated like a good team by our opponents. So I think that's the biggest reason why those outcomes keep happening.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Danny, Pete, what's up? It's Eche, West End Zone. Yeah, man, just wanted to get your 2 cents on a little bit of a rumor with regard to a feud between Adai and Steele, and just generally the staff not liking each other, almost like a mutiny type situation, to see if there's any truth at all to that. And then, for as horrible as the season has gone and just complete dumpster fire everything has been, usually in situations like this, you learn a lot about people and see sort of who steps up or whatever you want to call it, just to see if there's new leaders emerging, if there's, I guess, people seeing an opportunity and taking it to gain leadership roles in the team and so forth. Yeah, thanks.
First of all, congrats to Eche on his kid. The guy, ever since his wife had a kid, he's been posting like crazy, bitter as can be. It's like he's starting fatherhood. The bitterness started early. It should take time.
I always remembered him as a sunshine bringer.
Yeah, that's gone. But as to his first question, I'm not going to get into any kind of rumors and innuendo, but I'll say it's interesting. With Manny, the complaint was he's bringing in these homegrown guys that are going to be yes men to him, right? He trained these guys, so they're not going to be starting stuff with him. They're going to go with the program. Mario goes the total opposite way and gets guys alphas and guys that he has no real connection with. This guy's did good here, I'll take him. This guy did good here, I'll take him. So, there's got to be a balance, I think, in terms of familiarity and comfort, either whether it's, we came up from the same tree, even though we might not know each other, or something like that where there's a common thread, and then, picking guys that maybe are just yes men. There's got to be a balance. Some disagreement is good, and we'll see how this develops over time. But, yeah, all of those guys had success at previous spots. They did not forget how to coach. But it's got to fit with each other. It's got to fit the program. Look at Dan Enos. Maryland's doing a lot better with him there than certainly Miami did with him. It's about fit. A lot of it is about, again, fit with each other and fit with the players. So we'll see how this staff progresses. Some are going to be guys that stick around and like it and fit. Some won't. And that's what I said earlier about Mario learning the team and learning the staff. It's happening the hard way in a very expensive fashion.
How many players leave in the portal this offseason? Ballpark figure. Do we see a big turnover of players so Mario can get the sort of team he wants? I know you alluded to this one recently. But
yeah, and that's from Britt Kane. Britt Kane, you see we're international with CanesInSight. We're all over the place. We're in Bali. I got people texting me from Bali, England, Australia, all kinds of people. So shout out to Britt Kane. But in terms of transfer, again, the number I heard was 6 to 10 impact guys and 24 players coming in. So if you have, let's say, 34, 35 players coming in, there's got to be a lot coming out. Yeah. So I think there's going to be significant turnover.
And there's not going to be guys really, I don't think, leaving early either. So, it's not like you're going to have to find some guys who aren't here next year.
A lot of grad transfer opportunities, guys just portaling. Mario, he said he was going to bring discipline. You talked about it last week. That's something that's actually happening. He's implementing procedures and rules that are different and that are tough to comply with at times.
I think a lot of players are resisting.
So you're going to see that lead to some turnover. Again, Butch Davis is the parallel. I'm not saying it's going to turn out like it turned out with Butch, but certainly that's the model he's following. Cristobal, Jimmy, Butch, and then Cristobal left to work with Shiano. These are hard-ass coaches. Saban, that's what Cristobal learned under. Right. So some guys are going to bristle under that. They're going to just not connect, and they'll be out. So it's going to be a lot of people leaving. But I think if you're looking for what's the nucleus of this class, and this gets to one of Etche's questions about the leaders, look to this recent recruiting class, guys like Wesley, et cetera, Basainth. Look to guys like Cam Kitchens, James Williams, even though I know he's been up and down, he's still a solid player. At least that's the perception of him internally and externally. I know Canes fans will probably disagree, but he has fans in the building and around the country for what he does. You build around guys like that. Colby Young, A-plus guy character-wise from everything I'm hearing and he's producing. That's going to be the core of your team moving forward. Some of your transfers that you want to keep around, your Henry Parishes, your Messidors, your Daryl Jacksons. That's what's going to be the building block. But if you're not in that core, it wouldn't surprise me to see you go. Absolutely, it's going to be a lot of turnover, coaches and players.
Well, obviously, hope the Canes get the win this weekend against UVA. It's not going to be an easy task. It's another 3-4 team, but this is what the rest of the season is going to look like. So just looking for positives moving forward, and hopefully they can string some things together.
Yeah, it's like half of these seasons we've been not I have, but the fan base has been cheering for losses to try to get coaches fired. This coach isn't getting fired.
There's nothing to root for negatively here.
So let's come together, support the team, and hopefully they can get a W going into Florida State, which is going to be a huge opportunity. You definitely don't want to go in there on a 2-game losing streak. So big game this weekend.
Canes Insight Podcast here at the FRM Studios, brought to you by Caneswear, as we are every week. D, we'll be back next week, hopefully, after a Canes W.